So join me as I welcome Dr. Asandoh Louis.
Do we have some Africans in the house? You know, Africans are known for the noise they make. Right? If they are anywhere, you must know that they are there. So I want to know that I'm in Africa here. Can we make some noise? All right. You are just starting. But one thing about coming up at this time is that people are kind of hungry. And don't sleep on me, please. Stay awake. All protocol duly respected. I want to thank you and welcome you again to this conference, and I want to welcome everybody from any city you've come from. I want to begin with Tenopio City. Do we have representatives from Tenopio? That is not like it. I see you guys more vibrant. Can you make some noise? Okay. Sumi, can you do it better? Okay, might be Vinisa will show them how to do it. All right, and Keith, yeah! Amen. They are too full to shout. All right, thank you guys for coming, and I would really try to be brief because of the time. And I would want to talk on something which is kind of a cliche of a topic, but I believe by the time we are done, we all will learn some things from it. Please, can we maybe shut the windows so it'll be a bit clear for everyone? Okay, legacy. I want to ask quickly, who here knows what legacy is? What does it mean when we hear legacy? Any hand? Anybody? Okay, thank you. The footprints you leave behind. Can we jam our hands together for him? Please, I would like us to use our brains because we all have brains here, right? Okay, the footprints you leave behind. Now, in my short period of sojourning here on earth, I've come to realize that after God, there is nothing more important than legacy. Why? Because nothing refines purpose as legacy. Nothing enhances productivity as legacy. If you want to be intentional with everything you do on earth, you have to constantly think about the topic legacy. And that is why this is a subject that should be at the back of everyone's mind every day you get out of bed. Because the essence of life is to spend it for something that will outlast it. That is why we were given life. So you have not lived if you did not leave something after you leave this earth. That is why a great man said, spend your time writing your name on the hearts of men and not on tombstones. But the irony of life is that a lot of people spend their life writing their names on tombstones. What do I mean? You write your legacy every minute. How you live every day determines the legacy you will leave behind. And that is why most of the times when people have died and left this world, the only thing that we remember them for is when we get to their graveyards and we look at the tombstones, we see their names there. But wise men learn to inscribe their names upon the hearts of people that will live there forever. It's like writing your name on the rainbow and not on the sands that the wind will wipe. And I believe by the time we leave this place today, we will start thinking in that direction. Somebody believe that? Now, I came up with two definitions of legacy. Legacy is the you leave after you are gone. Whether you like it or not, you will leave a piece of yourself on earth before you go. It might be in your nuclear family. It might be in the group where you are studying or amongst your friends here in Ukraine. It might be in a city for those who would decide to live an intentional life. For some, it might transcend nations. For some, it might be in a continent. For some, it might be global. And for some, it might be transgenerational. Where do you want to place yourself? Within your nuclear family? In your village? In your city? In your nation? In your continent or a generational impact? I believe we all will go for a generational remembrance, right? The second definition I give to it is that legacy actually is the disciplines of the past in the hands of the present for the benefit of the future. Each and every person seated here is a product of someone's discipline. You all are a product of your parents' discipline. Your mother and your father came together and they worked it out in relationship. For those who think relationship is easy, I think we have coaches here. You can ask them. They'll tell you it takes more than enough work. And it takes serious discipline for you to be successful in respect to relationship, so as to bring forth a fruit that can be, or you can show as a product of that relationship. So it is a discipline of your parents that brought about you seated here. And you are the ones now. But what you do with your life is what determines if the future will benefit from that life or they will suffer for it. And if I talk about the disciplines of your parents, some maybe they were born out of wedlock. Some might be as a rape case. But the indiscipline of the man that led him to rape your mother automatically is subjected by your mother's discipline to preserve you and give birth to you. So that outweighs the man's indiscipline. Are we together? Now, disciplines of the past. When you look at medical science is a discipline, right? It is as a result of the discipline of some people in the past who came together. They realized the problem in the sphere of health, and they came together and brought about the discipline of medicine. And now it is in your hands. You are studying medicine. But what you do with the certificate after you graduate from med school is what determines if the future will benefit from it or not. Politics is a discipline. When we talk about politics, we think of people like Plato. We talk about the philosophers like Aristotle, Socrates. We remember them because these were men who realized that for men to live in harmony and to enforce law and order in a nation, they have to come about a certain rule or certain rules and regulations by which men should live in order to lead a good life. So politics was given birth to. And as a discipline of old, it is in the hands of politicians now. But what they do with it determines if the future will benefit from it or not. Disciplines of the past in the hands of the present for the benefit of the future. Now, when you look at Africa and the political aspect of Africa, what comes to mind? Do you think politics as a discipline has been used judiciously, or is it being used properly in the hands of those who are in the helms of power now for the benefit of the future? Most of us here, a lot of people are in, asylum camps who have escaped Africa. Some die over the Mediterranean. Some end up like plankton under the Mediterranean Sea. Some they end up like sands in the Sahara Desert because they are running away from people who have refused to use the discipline of politics for the benefit of the future generation. And that is one thing we need to correct. And the only thing that comes to mind when you think of that is that they have forgotten so soon what legacy is all about. I hope you will not forget when it's your turn. I have a couple of pictures here I want us all to look at. Every time you set or you put your gaze on one of those pictures, something comes to mind. Am I right? Now, on the top right hand of the screen, who do we have? What do you remember him for? He was a freedom fighter. He fought against the apartheid regime in South Africa, which is actually a regime orchestrated to suppress and marginalize the rights of the black people, right? He was jailed for several years. He came out and still stood for the same cause. He's no longer with us, but he lives with us. Why? Because he lives in our hearts. He succeeded in writing his name, not on the sands and not on the tombstones, but upon the hearts of people. Now, when you look in the middle, you find the face of a smiling old woman. And the name of that person is who? What do you remember her for? Charity, generosity, love. She stood for the fact that if you must change your world, you have to start by changing the next person close to you. And she did that by constantly showing love to people. She did that by making sure that she met the need of anyone she found close to her suffering within her capacity. And she's long gone, but we still remember her because of what she did. Am I right? The question is, how will you be remembered? Now, when we look down left, we find another person. When you see that picture, what comes to mind is what? I have a dream. One statement, one mantra. That's what he lived for. He sacrificed his life for that. He was killed for that. Yet he stood as a civil rights activist in soliciting for the rights of the blacks who were marginalized in the United States. And his legacy has forever lived and will never die, because he succeeded in not just making us remember him, but writing his name upon our hearts. Now, there is another set of pictures here. Do we have any soccer lovers or athletes in the house? Who do we identify over there? We have two MJs. We have Michael Jordan, MJ, and we have MJ, Michael Jackson, the Pop King. And in the middle, we have CR7, who is considered the greatest, though it depends on the supporters of Messi. So people say it's Messi. But there is one unique thing about them. These guys are consciously, intentionally, and constantly working towards what they believe they are called to do. And they are influencing their world with that. And even though they are alive, you know already that even if they die, their names will never be forgotten because of what they are doing. Next. Who do we have here? Now, over there, we have no other person but our famous Hitler. Yes. The reincarnation of who? Herman. Herman was the first person who attempted to erase the Jews from the face of the planet. But after a certain number of years, nobody stood in prayer to counter that spirit. So he came back in the person of who? Hitler. And he attempted it again. Now, that's spiritual. I don't want to get into that now. All right. Okay. And in the middle, we have another person. Who is that? Obama. All right. And down left, we have... There is one... President Trump. Okay, why are you guys laughing? Now, this picture is very interesting to me because the mustache of Hitler on Trump says a lot. That is to tell you how powerful legacy is. The simple mustache of who? Hitler on Trump changes the face of Trump and everything about what he believes or stands for. Am I right? The people you associate yourself with determine what you become in life and what you'll be remembered for. I'm not saying that he's associating himself. That's just an illustration. I use that to bring us back home to understand that one of the things that builds your legacy is the virtue of association. The people you give your ears to, the kind of things you read, the kind of things you study, whatsoever it is that you give your time to or you invest your time to is what will tell or what people will remember you for. Now, I want us to see this very interesting set of pictures. Now, we are going down home. We are going down home. Now, these are all African presidents. At the top right hand of the screen, we have our Oga. We have Baba. Yes. And in the middle, we have someone who to me is a mentor. To me is an icon. To me is someone I study, I learn from. I study his life. Because of reasons I can't actually get into, but I know a lot of us already know why. And then down left, we have another Baba. Right? We have another Baba. Now, I'll talk a little about these three people, and I'll begin with the one in the middle. Now, we know President Paul Kagame of Rwanda as a very, very patriotic president who has succeeded to not just raise a nation out of crisis, but has made it a shining example in the continent of Africa, right? Now, the thing is, this man comes from a minority tribe in Rwanda called what? The Tutsis. And the majority tribe was known as what? The Hutus. The Hutus were the ones who had the president, and they were constantly oppressing the Tutsis. Now, we remember Rwanda for the genocide that happened, and over 100,000 people were murdered in a day. Now, in a day, it doesn't mean only 100,000 people were killed, because there were more than that, because it actually lasted longer. But in a day, over 100,000 souls were killed. And him coming from the minority tribe, who actually were the ones who were murdered, even though he became a general and took over the nation, he had no iota of anger or revenge in him. He succeeded in reuniting the nation. He succeeded in deleting ethnicity. And he ended up bringing the nation under one umbrella, where you are not defined by your ethnic extraction, but by your nationality. In fact, you cannot call someone a Tutsi or a Hutu in Rwanda. You are a Rwandan. Now, in comparison to our Oga over here, we also have the same crisis plaguing the nation, which is ethnic crisis. It is a general thing in Africa. Now, looking at his case, it's so much like that of my country, Cameroon. I come from the minority tribe of Cameroon. And there is actually an active genocide going on now, where all the Anglophones are being murdered every day. While the Francophones believe that they are the ones who own everything and everyone should bow to them. This is exactly what this man actually found himself in. But how did he succeed to not just raise a nation that was termed or tagged the poorest nation in the world? He brought it out of crisis into fame. How did he do that? And why is it that our father here is failing in doing it? Rather, there are different factions. If it is not a religious faction, it is an ethnic faction. Either there are those in the north, those in the east, and those in the central, those in the south. How you understand how the terrain of Nigeria is more than I do. But what is different in what this man did, and why is it so difficult that what he did, he cannot do it? They are all presidents, but there is a disparity between their impact, and automatically it tells us what we will remember about them in respect to legacy. Now, down here we have another person who has been sleeping in power. He wanted to just die in power, and that's what I call the president for life syndrome. Until he was forced out of power. President for life syndrome. I'll get back to that picture, but I want us to look at something. Now, I don't know if we can see. Now, the question over there is, how will you be remembered? Knowing how you exit determines how you enter and influences how you walk through. Always begin with the end in mind. That is where legacy is born. When as a leader you do not know how to exit, you don't have a vision of how your term will end, you will enter anyhow and play through anyhow. That's why some enter the terrain of politics, and when they are playing along, by the time they get to the point they are supposed to exit, they turn back and remain in power. They want to die in power because they are afraid of exiting. But even if it is only one door you use to come in, you have to walk for a time and come out so that someone else will go in, because that's how life is. We all are born. The birth of man is the entry of man. The death of man is the exit of man. But what you do between birth and death is what determines how you will be remembered. And that is what legacy is all about. So when we start thinking in terms of legacy, there are a lot of things that we will stop doing. If leaders can only start thinking of how they will be remembered, there are so many things, so many problems, so many issues that we are actually discussing now that will not be there. There will not be a subject matter. And that is why I came up with this quote that was in 2014 when I wrote my first book. It's actually in it. Because I consciously think about legacy. Every day I think about it. And this quote is my mantra. I hold it so dear to my heart because it tells me a lot about myself and what I should do. I would like us to read it together, if you don't mind. What does it say? It is so funny we forget too soon how we will be forgotten when we are no more. He who remembers what he will be remembered for after he is gone will always be remembered because of what he remembered doing to be remembered for. You will only be remembered for what you remember to do to be remembered for. So, failing to remember doing what you will be remembered for is actually not failing to be forgotten. I hold that dear to my heart. As a medical student, you have 6 years in medicine. How you enter determines, or when you have a picture of how you exit, it determines how you enter, and it influences how you walk through. You have medical students who are living like touts. You have students in Ukraine who are living like street hawkers. You have people who have forgotten completely why they are here, because they have no vision of their endpoint. Some get into first year, by the time they realize by impulse they are in fourth year. They don't know how they got there. They start struggling to see how they will finish the remaining 2 years. And by the time they come out, they are frustrated. If you ask them what next, they can't tell you. You are blind to your end. And being blind to your end is being blind to your life. The only way you can be intentional in everything you do is having the end in mind. Beginning with the end in mind. It will guide you through. Now, let's continue. I came up with this. I call it the legacy chart. You might be here thinking, how then do I actually engage this topic of legacy? How do I walk through it properly? You have to understand how it is categorized, because that is where you get to know where you are functioning. Now, I did my research and I came up with this chart. Now, I classify it into 4. The first is personal legacy. The second is community legacy. The third is national legacy. And the fourth is global legacy, or what I call generational legacy. What is personal legacy? Personal legacy are all the accolades, the degrees you acquire on earth. You are here in med school, in engineering. You are called a doctor, you are a PhD holder, you are this, you are that. That is your personal legacy. And the irony is that oftentimes we acquire a lot of these degrees and this personal legacy, but we end up not impacting one life close to us. Growing up, I knew one professor in my area. He was known and feared just because he carried the professorial title. But he left no impact in the life of anybody. Your personal legacy hardly touches the life of anyone by you. But the sad reality is that we spend close to 80% of our life building personal legacy. We move from MBA to MBA. We move from one master's to the other. It is never enough. You acquire them. Before you know, you are 70. No strength. You have not impacted even one person in your nuclear family. There are people who have not touched even their siblings, even though they are at a point where they should be able to help. From your community, you are not known, but you have all the PhDs. It is a common syndrome with Africans. Running from pillar to post, running from one degree to the other, but failing to understand that we have a limited time. And by the time you get all those certificates, you don't have enough time to leave a mark on earth. And you die and you are forgotten. Your certificates become a decoration on a wall. Community legacy. Now, when you talk of community legacy, this happens to be the lowest form of legacy people are cognizant of, or they are intentional about. Recently, we saw this post on Facebook. It was making waves. A Kenyan man, a 45-year-old Kenyan man, a 45-year-old Kenyan man. I said, okay, let me also stop and check and see what's happening here. So by the time I took a critical analysis of this post, I took a screenshot. And I'll tell you why. When you look at this, you see an old man with a path that he actually has created with a pickaxe. And again, nothing about the name of this man is mentioned, but his age. I have a question. How can you have a conversation with someone like that? That picture was taken at close proximity, which means the photographer had an interaction with the man, because he even posed on his pickaxe and took the picture. But all the man asked was his age and not his name. How is that possible? The bad thing about that is that when you look up, you will see another very long name. Mildred Europa Taylor, staff writer, personal legacy. You should know I'm the one. I'm staff writer of what? Face to Face Africa. She's announcing herself, even though the reason why she is writing is more important than her writing. Because without this reason, she will have nothing to write about. Am I right? You still see personal legacy elevated above community legacy. This man might die, but one day this road might be named after him. But what would be the name of that street? 45 Lane Avenue? Because roads are named according to the way they fall in the latitudes and longitudes. They might say east-west, they might say E45, they might say S this, N this. That's how they name roads in developed worlds, right? How would this road be named? 45 might be the village name, then something avenue or street or lane. Lane, that's how they call it. 45 something lane. To add to it, go down. Picture credit. Ndanditari Kinguku Mikeke Jr. If you split that name into two, this man will have one name. In fact, you have two. Picture credit, he is the photographer. So another word, personal legacy elevated above community legacy. What a sad disparity. This is what happens in Africa. So when they become professors, they come back home. They want to pounce on every person who is under them. Because they've forgotten that your professorial title means to proffer. Proffer means to give. When you are a professor, it means to proffer solutions, to hand over to the younger generation. But our professors are monitoring spirits. They are taskmasters. If you are in Africa trying to become a professor, you will grow gray hair. You hardly find young African professors. Why? Because our professors are what? They are, I don't know what name to give to that. So they are indirectly defying the title they are bearing. Professors are meant to raise the next generation. And again, what is professor? Personal legacy. It hardly impacts any person. Rather, in most cases, especially in the sphere of Africa, personal legacy is used to subject, to show off, raise shoulders, and make every other person lie down. That's why when you become a politician, you move with an arm to the teeth entourage. There is a very long motorcade behind you because you are what? Why in Europe, those titles are meant for service, not to be served. And that's because they don't constantly think about legacy. Another thing that comes to mind when I look at this picture is the case with Jumbo's restaurant in Miami, USA. In the 1950s, there was a white-owned restaurant in the USA called Jumbo's Restaurant. And now, this restaurant only had white workers. They never allow even a black man to eat there. They never. But now, in the 1960s, one man bought over this restaurant, still a white, and he immediately employed 3 black people. The day he employed the 3 black people, 15 white workers resigned. But he went ahead to open up the restaurant. Not only did blacks work there, blacks also were allowed to do what? To eat. And then later when the crisis against racial prejudice were actually heating up and homes were being burnt down and razed, this restaurant stood as a symbol of what? Civil rights protection. It was never touched. The man did not only succeed in leaving a community legacy, he left a transgenerational legacy. And he has a son called Mozart Daniel, I think so if I've not forgotten. He is one of the best writers in the United States. He is still alive. He has written books about the White House, about blacks. He is pro, how do we call it? Racial prejudice. I don't know how to put it. But he's standing for the voiceless through his books. Why? It is because of what he saw his father do. Legacy is not leaving something for people, but leaving something in people. He did not leave. The father did not leave wealth or certain things for the son, but he taught the son how to be a man of integrity. He taught the son how to solicit for those who are oppressed. He taught the son to use his power in respect or in the protection of the powerless and not to suppress them otherwise. Do we have such in Africa? The question I want to ask yourself today is, how will you be remembered? How will you be remembered? Imagine yourself on your deathbed. Whether you like it or not, we all will die someday. 60, 70, 90, 120, 200 years from now, depending on how long you live. He will die someday. But the question is, on your deathbed, who first of all will attend your funeral? First question. Imagine you are lying there in your casket, half open, your face, eyes closed. Who are those who will come around looking down at your black face or maybe your fair face or whatsoever how do I call it again? Whatsoever your complexion is, they'll be looking down at you. What will be running through their minds? Will you be the man? Other people will be happy. Though they are crying, they'll be like, thank God he died. My wife can be left alone for me. There are men who die and their neighbors jubilate because they were a terror while they were alive. While they were alive, rather. That's true. Will you be the lady? Others will be crying, but they'll be like, thank God, Radio 1 battery is gone. At least we can have peace. Because you make stories that you didn't even see. The wind blow, you just write a movie. A leaf just falls down. There is already a story written. Will you be that kind of person? Will you be that son? God forbid you die before your parents, but it happens. And those it happens to, they are not animals. It happens to anybody. I want us to face facts. Will you be that son? Though your parents will be crying, they'll be happy. At least we can now rest. Because when you were in Ukraine, you duped your parents. Croc money is $3,000. Croc, 3,000 for croc fee. Because once you write this exam and graduate, you can work in the US, Canada, or Australia. And then by the time you graduated, they are expecting you to work. There are many frustrated people in Ukraine now who have graduated because they lied a lie they cannot reverse. That time the money was sweet, but you forgot about the future. You forgot about what? Legacy. What comes after that moment? That now moment. What comes after? The after effects. So now you are graduated. Your parents are expecting you to start sending them money because you lied that there is an exam you write that qualifies you to start working the moment you step out of med school. Now you are out. Are you working? Graduation robe is $1,500. And there is a suit too. The suit is $700. They pack the money. They sell their lands. Some even lease their cars. Do you think you die and you lie there? Your parents, though they are crying, somewhere in their heart, no, they will be like, at least I will not grow, I will not have a bald head while at this age because of this young man. God knows why he has taken him. Will you be that child? When you think like that, that's where character is born. Because character is what gives birth to legacy. Character is what gives birth to legacy. You will not lie in med school because you want to show off. Some people lie. I don't understand. To buy things, to show off to people that after I graduated 2 years ago from med school. There are some friends we parted ways that we will never meet, maybe only in heaven. That's if they are saved. We might never meet again in life. You are killing yourself in Ukraine. You have just 6 years, for some only 4, depending on what you are studying. Because of one lady or one guy. People will not hear word. People will not drink water. And after 4 years, whether you like it or not, you must enter the plane and go. And you will not carry the person because the person is only your personal property. But you did not let people rest in Ukraine. You caused fire in churches. You caused fire in organizations. You caused fire everywhere you went to. Just for a short period of 6 years here. The legacy you left is what? The legacy of disorder. When we start thinking in terms of legacy, we will always outlive our lifespan. Why? Because legacy does not come by chance. Legacy comes through intentional living. You have to be intentional about it. You have to be intentional about it. Next thing I want to say, priorities. Your priorities build up your legacy. What you prioritize determines what your legacy will be. And failing to prioritize is prioritizing to fail. If you prioritize the bottle, you will be remembered for the effects of the spirit in the bottle. Growing up, I know certain men who were in my area. They were known for their drunkenness. All they did, all their lives was to do what? To always drink. In fact, they move with a bag by them and with a cup. And the cup is always the horn of a cow or something, or a goat or something. Those parents, for those who grew up in a village like some of us, whenever they go out, on coming back, why they move with their cup is because they are ever ready to drink. They don't want to miss any opportunity if there is a calabash around. So sometimes before they get back home, they are dead drunk. And when they die, they are known. At least if they are saying something about that particular family, drunkenness must pop up. Why? They made the spirits in the white calabash or the white liquid or in the green bottle their priority. There are some ladies who will be remembered for expensive disfiguration of their faces in the name of makeup. Growing up too, I remember one lady, we used to call her Mami Omo. Why? Omo is a brand name for a particular detergent we had back then. As kids, we thought what she used to apply on her face was Omo because that's what we knew. Because then, the list for makeup was not as much as what we have now. It was just powder and lipstick. Red to be specific. So she will pack this thing on her face every time. Anywhere she goes to. If she pops out on the street and you set eyes on her, you must know her. You must know that is Mami Omo. She's long dead, but I still remember her because of what? Omo. That was her priority. Will you be Mami makeup? There are many saying we are makeup artists on this, and yet you have no client. Makeup artists on Instagram, you have no client. We don't know whom you've made up. What you prioritize. There are some students who are supposed to be here now, but because 300 grievance is too much of a bill for them to pay, they will stay back home. But you know what they will do? They will go and buy Jack Daniels. Do you know the cost of Jack Daniels? Before I became a pastor, I used to live that life, so I know these things too. Jack Daniels, depending on the size, 1,000 something grievance per bottle, but they cannot pay 300 grievance for a conference that will add value to their lives and make them think of their legacy. And that's how you would jack your liver and end with what? Liver cirrhosis someday. Another one is what? Grants, expensive whiskey. And you will grind your internal organs. The names of these things are given with a purpose. You are grinding it. And they say you are grinding. You know swag, right? They say when you are living life, they say you are grinding, right? You are grinding your life away. You will not be such a person. You will not be such a person. Don't grind your life away. There are 4 things I spelled out there. What priorities do. Number 1, priorities adjust your focus. When your focus is adjusted, that means automatically that your gaze is taken off distractions. So your eyes are set on a particular direction. And when your eyes are focused in this direction, this is how you move. Some people are looking this way but moving this way. If God wanted us to be moving sideways, he would have put our eyes here. That is that is what happens when you are in med school and you are behaving like somebody who is selling tomatoes or shawarma. You are in med school, but you are moving like a shawarma seller. No. Focus. It takes your gaze off distractions. I remember one day I sat in a Ashanti restaurant to eat pancake. There are very good pancakes there. After a class, I sat there in Vinita. And when I sat there, I was eating. I saw this lady seated out with other guys. They were blowing shisha and popping O's. That's life. I sat there, my spirit didn't leave. I walked out. I called her in. And I talked to her bitterly, but in love. After 2 weeks, I saw her in church. She kept coming to church until she graduated and went back home. How can you be a medical student? You have class by 7 a.m. tomorrow and you are blowing shisha by 12 midnight with people who wake up by 11. Is that not misdirection of priorities? Misappropriation of time? There are many people who are like that. You get to class with hangover, they ask you one question, you start murmuring because you don't know anything.
You start spitting O's to the teacher and you get 0 because you know how to pop O in smoke. You are popping O, so when you open your mouth to speak, it is O they see and it's O they hear spiritually. Because what you do follows you. The next thing it does is what? Priorities order your steps. They guide your steps because your gaze is here. Your steps are also that way. The next thing it does is what? It shapes your character. You behave as a student. There is a behavior for students. And there are behaviors for layabouts. The last thing it does is what? It delivers expected results. I want to rush very fast because of time. Priorities. You will be remembered. Your priorities will actually be what will determine how you are remembered and what you are remembered for. I want to give you a priority guide. There are 3 of them. Number 1, vision. Vision is what? The visualization of your destination. Number 2 is what? Passion, which I also call purpose because your purpose is what you are passionate about. Passion is what? The vehicle that drives you to that destination you have visualized. And the last one is what? Action, which is also what? Automation, which is the fear needed to put in the car or the vehicle that will take you to that destination. Now, I want you to take note of this, that I want to say right now. No matter how visionary you are, no matter how passionate you are, if you lack action, you will only end up as a general overseer because of the size of your eyes. They will only grow big, but no action. There are some people you meet, and when you talk with them, they will build their future. Now you can see when they are speaking, you see the cities and the magnificent utopias they are building. But after 2 years, you meet them, they still have the same spirit. But because there is no action, there is 0 result. If I'm driving from here, now if you don't have, no matter how new your car is, if there is no fuel in it, the ignition will not even turn on. What determines the response when you press the accelerator pedal in respect to the pace of the car is the content or the quantity of the fuel in the car. So if your car is running low on fuel and you are pressing the accelerator pedal, it slows down and sometimes even stops. So if you are on your journey to Vinica and you have just 10 kilometers to get to Vinica and you are short of fuel, no matter how passionate you are, you are seeing your destination and you sit behind the wheel. You are passionately sitting and you want to get to Vinica. No fuel, you will not get there. You will park the car, use a gallon, walk to a filling station, get fuel, put it there before you move. It's the same thing with our lives and legacies. If you are only visionary and you lack passion, it cannot amount to anything. If you are passionate about your vision and you lack action, you will never get anything done. So the 3 must go together. Are we together? We are together, right? I want to leave you with this. Do not die an aspiration. Die a realization. Do not die an aspiration. Die a realization. The sad truth about this is that most people end up dying an aspiration. When you go to graveyards, they are dead men with aspirations lying there. Only few men with realized dreams and goals. The greatest statement ever made in the world and in the Bible is, "It is finished." It is finished is not a solicitation. It is finished is not a contemplation. It is finished is not a question. It is finished is neither a suggestion. It is finished is a realization. That is why Christ can never be forgotten, because he realized his dreams. It is finished is a realization, and that is where legacy is born. Thank you.